All right, trying this again here. So hopefully this will work out better. I invited Diana and Scott. And I don't know if that's what it wants me to do. So I will also invite them to watch. Yeah, that's my issue, is I don't really have a way to stabilize my phone in a way that it's actually pointing at me, so that is a little annoying, but... Alright. Okay. Add. Sweet. I'm going to see if I can't find a way to get my phone facing the way I want it to be. Hi! Here we go.
Hey!
And I invited Mary back in, so hopefully she will see that we're ready to go. So here we are.
Yeah, we don't do this. We don't do this often enough, so I keep forgetting. I thought I remembered that you. I thought I remembered that you had to be on your cell phone.
Which seems weird. I understand that that's more convenient, but that seems weird to me that that you're not able to use certain features on the laptop. That seems like opposite the way it would be normally, but that's fine. So it's kind of an introduction to what we're doing today. This is sort of a spontaneous live because we had some. Oh, what, Diana?
Well, where are you at?
Yes. So I am on Ute, Go Shoot Shoshone Stolen Land in northern Utah. What about you, Diana?
I'm on Stolen Hickory Apache and Southern Ute land, and I love it here.
It's beautiful. Yes, I got to visit Diana a little while ago, and it is a beautiful, beautiful area. Lots of open space, lots of land out there. Yeah. I'm a little jealous. I'm in, like I say, northern Utah. I'm north of Salt Lake, so I'm still kind of in the, not really city, but it's still more less country than where you're at. I wish I had a lot.
And you know, in a way, I even think that when we talk about stolen land, that's not really enough, because in a way we are actually occupying the land.
Yes,
it's not just stolen. You know,
we're
squatters.
We are taking them off. It's not just taken. It's not just that we're claiming we own it. We're also taking up the land and using up the land and using it in ways that are not in line with how native peoples would have used it.
Exactly.
So,
and that piece of paper that's called a deed gives us the right to call it ours, you know, but it's a legal right, but it's not necessarily it's not the moral right, you know.
Right. That makes sense. I like that. That's a good way of putting it.
So you have mentioned some aha moments. So Alyssa and I are on tonight just to practice a little bit and get better doing lives, because we don't do those often enough. So we both kind of get nervous, and we still run into technical difficulties. Next time we're going to remember that we have to do this just on the cell phone. And so we are going to try and do these more often and talk a little bit science, talk a little bit about what you can do with your dogs, and just other things that are on our minds, and answer your questions if you have any and you want to post them. Talk about things that might be coming up, like our next workshop. And yeah, so get started. Alyssa might have some questions for me. Yes. I don't know. You do.
I hope so. So yeah, that's the plan. So this is sort of a spontaneous thing because we're kind of excited. We came across some of our own, like I say, our own aha moments earlier today, And we figured it was a good time to just start popping on when we find something that's exciting for us and that's new and interesting and different. And that's the big thing with effective dog behavior is, so my background, to talk about me a little bit before we get started with the actual interview, quote unquote, process here. And it'll explain a little bit of the direction we're going here. So my background is actually in behaviorism. I got my bachelor's degree in applied behavior analysis, basically. And I don't think it's officially that. I think because I didn't do one of the math credits or the language credits or something like that, I wasn't able to officially say that that's what I specialized in. But that's what all my psychology classes were in, was behaviorism primarily. And that's when I jumped from there into dog training, using what I'd learned through college and through research and all of that stuff, trying to learn methods and everything. And so that's where my background is in behavior analysis, and that's where my knowledge was and is primarily early on, from way back when. And that was 2008, I believe, is when I graduated. So since then, I've been in the dog training world off and on. I met Scott 5 approaching
4
years ago.
4
I feel like 4 still.
about
Okay, 4
4.
between 4 and 5 years ago, because I had reached out to the dog training community in general on Facebook, trying to find somebody who used an emotional approach, because I had been doing research on parenting, came across a lot of Robert Sapolsky, a lot of other neuroscientists who discussed a lot about what goes on internally, emotionally, and how to apply those things to children. And I'd done this in preparation of having children, and started wondering why we don't do this with dogs. We talk a lot about how the dog brain is kind of like a toddler brain and it's very emotional and yada yada, and yet we still treat dogs and address dog behavior issues from a very non-parenting, non-child standpoint. We still use very mechanical, robotic methods where it's, behavior consequence, antecedent behavior consequence, right? The ABCs. So since meeting Scott, my training method, my training, not even my just my method, but my philosophy in working with dogs in general has evolved and changed quite a bit. And so I call myself a recovering behaviorist. I have behaviorism knowledge, but
and I love that.
yeah.
But let me ask you something real quick. What attracted you to ABA?
I've always been a very sciencey person. Originally, my interest was in biology. I wanted to do wildlife science or something like that, and go out and be with the animals, right? And study the animals. And so that's how I started college, was doing wildlife science. And I think I took a class on ABA, and in my mind, I had this superiority complex of, well, psychology is a soft science, right? It's not evidence-based because you can't look in the brain, you can't see what's going on, and you can't glean accurate scientific information from surveys, right? You can get what people think happened or what they feel happened, but you're not likely to get the actual facts of what happened. And so I've always had that kind of fact-oriented, straightforward, black and white attitude. And so I liked ABA because I started liking psychology, but I specifically liked how ABA was a very scientific, quote unquote, way of looking at behavior and looking at psychology. I didn't, the whole talk therapy thing, it was like, well, it's just, people just talking. Like, where's the science behind that? It's just
all
surveys.
opinions.
People's opinions, right?
Yeah.
And people's interpretations of people's opinions and people's opinionated interpretations of people's opinions. So that's where my brain went initially. And it wasn't until getting into the parenting and starting to recognize, okay, yeah, the emotional lives matter. There are ways of recognizing what's happening there. There is a lot in neuroscience that has advanced that we can get a good idea based on outward stuff of what's going on internally. We don't have to guess. We do pretty well know that this is probably why that behavior is happening, and this is what's going on internally for that person or animal. because of all that research that's been done in brain scans looking at the brain. So my perspective changed at that point of starting to recognize that the internal world, it's still hard. I think with therapy, it's a lot harder because you're an outside source trying to help another person recognize their own, like what's going on with themselves. So that I could still see that being complex. But in a way, that's what's fun about it. And I know, Diana, that's something that you talk about sometimes, is the complexity is not recognized in behaviorism. There is a lot of complexity. There's a lot more going on internally than we're willing to admit, and a lot of, honestly, that's what's affecting behavior. We talk about emotions affect behavior. It's not the environment. I mean, it kind of is. It's influenced by that. But to say that the antecedent and the consequence are the only thing affecting behavior is narrowing it down to 15%, right? Some small percent of what is actually causing that behavior. So, yeah.
And the funny thing is, when we start training, okay, we are actually distorting the behavior. We are, in a way, we are taking the behavior away from what's happening internally. And of course, you have to have that internal part for that behavior to happen. But the innate internal process that sets the animal up for whatever it needs to do in whatever given moment is kind of being hijacked through training. So the behaviors that we see do not always match what's going on internally, because you can have a dog that sits there nice and calmly, but internally it might be fuming. The rage system can still be aroused even when the animal sits there, because they have been trained to sit there nice and calmly. So we are kind of hijacking the behavior away from the actual innate internal process.
Absolutely. And we see that with people. Like we can't deny this stuff when our own personal experiences tell us this. We can suppress external symbols or external behavior that reveals our emotions. So why can't dogs do that? It happens. And it's not necessarily, we talk in the R plus training world a lot about, punishment suppresses behavior, punishment suppresses emotions. But the thing is, social expectations suppress behavior. Social expectations suppress emotions. And for us to deny that our dogs are so socially motivated that to deny that they will change their behavior, expression of behavior, even when we're trying to be positive, right? Trying to be reward based, is to deny social connection. That social connection is the need to fit in. It is the need to bond. And you can't fit in and bond if what you are doing goes against the social norm that you're experiencing. So that's one thing that we absolutely can't keep denying, is that yes, sorry, but rewards, positive reinforcement can and will suppress behavior and can and will suppress emotions.
And that's why I personally, and I know that's not really popular, I still I refer to that as street coercion. And so anyway, the aha moments today. So Scott had a video that he made, and it was a really interesting video. And it was of a dog that was spinning. And typically, a lot of times we would look at that as being OCD. But Scott recognized what the dog needed. The dog needed an emotional connection. And when she didn't get that initially, she kind of, at one point, and I don't remember the exact time sequence, but at one point, she started playing with the other dog a little bit out of frustration. And then I think then she came back and started spinning again, and Scott kind of talked to her, and she came over, and sure enough, she melted right into Scott's touch, and which was really neat to see because so anyway, the aha moments, and Scott was talking about that dogs then show those kind of behaviors that we refer to as being OCD, that there is a greater need for cuddles, for comfort, touch, and not for play, even though she played just a moment ago. But that wasn't what she needed. And so one of the aha moments was, and we always check things and look for science to see where we are with our observations. And so we already know that rhythmic, repeated behaviors, they release endogenous opioids. So spinning like that or tail chasing is a release of endogenous opioids. And the only time we need to go for that release is when our emotional needs are not met and we run low on endogenous opioids. To play, so in order for a dog to feel the need to play, they already have to have a moderate level of endogenous opioids. Because a moderate level of endogenous opioids initiates play. It causes an initiation of play. So if you're low on opioids, you're not going to engage in play. You're going to seek behaviors or emotional connection, which increases your endogenous opioids. So, of course, then we kind of try to find the science for it, and sure enough, and if somebody wants to have the links to that, I can provide that link. And actually, I'm going to post that link in the comments after this live. But I did find a science paper that talked about endogenous opioids being low, and specifically the beta endorphins being low in people that in humans that deal with OCD behaviors. And so which actually makes perfectly sense with what Scott has observed throughout his career and today too when he made that video. And so the need during OCD behaviors is not to play. It is to actually socially connect. And yes, spinning releases endogenous opioids, specifically I haven't found yet exactly which one is being released, but running low on beta endorphins. Beta endorphins, they bind to a specific receptor, and that receptor is very much involved in emotional bonding. So this is how we can actually back chain it a little bit and see what the dog really needs. The dog needed emotional connection.
So normally I think the as Scott points out here in the comments, normally what we would look at, what we see as a solution for these behaviors is to either engage the dog in play or enrichment activities, structured enrichment activities, or relaxation protocols. So this dog, like you said, initially she's doing the spinning, she goes and lets out some frustration, right? Some frustration through play. What was the indicator? What would be the indicator to you guys of what was needed in that moment? Like you said, you already know that repetitive behaviors are usually low endogenous opioids. Why wouldn't a relaxation protocol work in that situation?
Yes, I'm back chaining based on kind of what Scott has observed and what he has given me in that video, the knowledge that, because he has a lot of experience. So his experience and his success with the dogs shows me that he's always onto something. And then I try to find the science, but also in understanding how play works and how play needs endogenous opioids to even start. Okay, that sequence of what happened with that dog today, she was spinning first and then she went for play. So spinning releases endogenous opioids. So she didn't go play first and then start spinning. She was spinning first, which increases endogenous opioids. Then she was able to play, but then she came back because there's no way that she had enough endogenous opioids at that point. But then she came back and started spinning again. So, and why shouldn't we call it OCD? Well, OCD, I do have to go, I do have to go into the science on that one now, okay? And that is all in that, I think it's all in that same article. OCD is, it involves the hippocampus, but it involves a lot of areas of the brain, but OCD also involves the prefrontal cortex, especially an area it's called the orbital, and I don't remember if it's the one that's in the center, but it's on the bottom of the prefrontal cortex, and it gets really technical. But what they have determined is that in humans, OCD, people that deal with OCD have less dense gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, in specific areas of the prefrontal cortex. So since dogs have a very small prefrontal cortex, in, you know, looking at all the like in relation to the rest of the brain, a dog's prefrontal cortex is extremely small. So even physically, I am not sure if OCD in a dog would look the way it would in a human, because the brain region, because the cortical brain is different in a dog. It is less dense, it's less complex, and the prefrontal cortex is very, very small. So having that, knowing that the prefrontal cortex is very much involved in OCD in humans, that makes me think that probably in dogs, OCD is, it might exist, but probably not in that same form. And so just looking at the neurobiology, it's, you know, that so that's why I personally, I would not consider that OCD unless they can show the neurobiology in canines as well. But because it involves the not just the prefrontal cortex, but other areas of the cortical brain as well. And the cortical brain is so much more complex with 86 billion neurons versus 500 million. There is a good chance that OCD is just not the same in canine and in humans, because
like
OCD
there's a huge cortical element in humans of us justifying or rationalizing or explaining why we're doing the behavior, and having superstitions and things like that around the behavior.
Yes. And not only cortical, but the cortical brain is very much involved. And since that is so different in dogs, you know, and including the reasoning and so on, we have to be careful on the issues that involve the cortical brain to automatically transfer that over into dogs. We have to be careful on that. You know, because the part of the brain that is the same in canine and in human is the limbic system. And dogs will always be more in functioning from the limbic system than from the cortical brain. And the cortical brain in dogs is, yes, they can fine-tune their behaviors, otherwise they would always automatically attack. And they would always automatically run away instead of taking in all the information and coming up with the best way to deal with the situations. Dogs can do that too, but we have to be careful when it comes to things that primarily involve the cortical brain, so that we don't automatically assume it's the same way in dogs, because it is not.
Absolutely.
The cortical brain is different.
Yep.
It has
absolutely.
all the same structures. It has all the same structures, but there's a huge difference between 86 billion neurons and 500 million.
So this dog that Scott was watching that had this spinning behavior, one thing that I see commonly that has been pointed out over the years, or that I've noticed over the years, is how often a dog that is active, that is behaving in a hyperactive way, is diagnosed as needing more stimulation. What are your thoughts on that? I know that's a big topic, but what are we seeing a lot with that? What's in this case, maybe specifically, that dog was being very active, very hyper.
This is where it really does help to learn the basics of neurobiology, and so that we can read those needs correctly. Okay, so maybe in a previous lifetime, in a previous dog-related lifetime, okay, prior to me getting involved with affective dog behavior, I probably would have looked at it the same way, because that dog is moving. But there's a difference between movement and movement. Okay, so whenever we look at, whenever we observe rhythmic, repeated behaviors, the first thing that comes to my mind is endogenous opioids, because that's what it releases. Okay, why do we release endogenous opioids? Because we have some form of pain, withdrawal pain. Is it emotional? Is it physical? They both share the same pathways in the brain, so it doesn't really matter. We can help both emotional or physical pain through release of endogenous opioids. So if she would have been jumping up and just going goofy and or doing play bows and so on, that's not rhythmic repeated behaviors. That's just wild behaviors, okay? But there's no rhythm to it. It's a rhythm that tells me that she needs endogenous opioids. And so there's a huge difference. And why do we need the endogenous opioids? Endogenous opioids have a calming effect. So it's not just that they ease pain, but endogenous opioids also have a calming effect. So, for example, if you're nervous, you might start chewing on your nails, or you might start twiddling your thumbs, because the endogenous opioids that you release help you and help your amygdala calm your nerves and that's where the parasympathetic nervous system comes into play too, because the sympathetic is supposed to get you going, is supposed to give you that energy, but you don't always need to move in big ways. So when you find yourself twiddling your thumbs or petting your dog because you're nervous, then you don't need to be running around and working off that energy. You are doing this innately, automatically, without you even thinking about it. You're trying to calm yourself down. So that spinning is a way for her to release the opioids that help her calm herself down. And
so I see it as doggy stimming.
It's doggy stimming, pretty much. Yes.
It's a way of
and there's always other stuff at play too. It's not just endogenous opioids. She isn't just doing it because of endogenous opioids, because if there is an element of doggy OCD, there's more than just the lack of endogenous opioids. It's just rhythmic, repeated behaviors release endogenous opioids, and that's when we need to have that awareness of emotional connection, because we can help that dog even better than those spins can, because the social
we
type
saw that
of
because the dog started spinning. Dog's going to start spinning again, right? They spin, they start to feel better.
yes, and then they
soon as
might
they start
play a little.
playing, now they need to feel better again. So
Yes. So, and that's how we can kind of see or recognize the difference between when does the dog need to move and when does the dog actually, is the dog actually looking to be calmer? Because it doesn't look like a calming behavior, but it is. Even though she's still moving, but in that movement itself, you can find calmness. Okay, dancing releases endogenous opioids. Okay, so even though, just because I'm dancing and I'm looking for that rhythm and the music that enters my body and my senses, and I'm looking for that, it has an intoxicating, calming effect. Dancing is like, I mean, you can lose yourself in dancing, and especially if it's rhythmic dancing. And I'm not talking about ballet but the stuff that goes with the drums or goes with the with the music like that, with the really rhythmic music. So you are moving, but that doesn't mean that you want to go wild and you have so much energy. You're actually
moving
finding
just enough
calmness.
to feel good.
Yes, you find calmness within that movement,
Right.
and it's very relaxing. It's very relaxing to dance.
So
And
sorry.
does that make sense?
I was gonna go from there. That being said, are there situations where the movement or you briefly mentioned dogs that are jumping or dogs that are otherwise being, apparently hyper. How much activity is needed in situations like that? You say that the rhythmic stuff is the stuff where it's obvious that what they need is endogenous opioids. What about other situations where you have a dog that seems hyped up, a dog that seems active? Is this a dog that needs to be hiked 3 hours a day like I've seen clients try to do to wear their dog out? Or why is that dog so physical, so active?
It depends again whatever the need is. Sometimes dogs go a little bit hyper and goofy and give you annoying behaviors to show you that they have a need. But sometimes you really have to know your dog to know what kind of need they have. Lucy, for example, okay? Lucy can get really annoying and hyped up if the water bowl is empty. Okay, so she doesn't go over to the water and stuff. She just kind of goes goofy. Or if feeding time is a little bit delayed because I don't feed at the exact same time. I kind of give myself a 2-hour window because I don't want the dopamine to go up and spike close to every time she's gonna expect the food or the feeding time comes around. So Lucy can go really goofy. So instead of her giving into frustration in an angry way, she shows me in a funny way that there's some frustration, that her dopamine is going up, and which I'm very, very grateful for, because there are dogs that are different. So you do have to keep your eyes and ears open and your senses. You need to stay open-minded so that you know your dog. Okay. But let's say the dog is hyper because of a need to play. Then play doesn't last forever. Play is not designed to last a long time because, as we mentioned before, you have to have endogenous opioids to even want to play. And so if, let's say, Lucy's endogenous opioids are just at that level where she wants to play, then during play, endogenous opioids also increase. And there's another thing that also increases because it is a social, it's emotional, a social emotional connection, and that would be oxytocin. Oxytocin actually slows play down. It puts a stop to play. Okay, and when the endogenous opioids reach a satisfying level, then because we don't want to OD on endogenous opioids, play also slows down. So play is not designed to to last forever. The younger the dog, the longer it lasts. But in the older the dog, with Lucy, I mean, she can go really wild with Scott, but even there, Lucy's going to show Scott, hey, and then she pounces at the toy and she might lay down and start chewing on that toy, and so she's redirecting herself. She does not want to lose that social engagement with Scott, but she does not necessarily want to go wild all the time. So those, yeah, if a dog shows me that they need to move that way, I'm going to play. Yes, absolutely. And if the dog goes a little bit too wild, I'm going to get more annoying. And then the dog is going to redirect me to a toy. And you have seen that when you were here for your week. You have seen that. When we get annoying, then the dog actually wants to redirect us. They're like, what the heck?
That's a great way to get an annoying dog to stop.
This is how you get an annoying dog to stop. You're going to be more annoying, and they don't like that at all. So why should we always be the ones that have to redirect the dog, which a lot of times doesn't really work that well, So make that your idea, make it the dog's idea. And because they can do that too, and they do. And it's funny to watch.
Is the time to do that because that's when they're more resilient, right? It's not being mean, but being just a little bit more annoying, doing just enough to get them to be like, yeah, I want to do something else.
In a funny way, exactly.
Way. I'm still friendly. I'm still social.
Yes.
I'm still safe. But
and that's what play's all about.
You're now going to choose something else.
Yes, and that's what play's all about. Is about learning social skills. And for a dog to learn to pick up a toy and bring it to you because you were too wild as the human, that is pretty awesome. That's an amazing social skill.
Right. Well, what you were saying, your comment on that video with Scott, I wanted to read it. Is it okay if I read it specifically, like how you stated it? Because like I said, that was a huge, for me, it was a really kind of aha, exciting thing for me. And I'll try and do my best to kind of explain a little bit about the background of it. But again, we have this dog with the spinning behavior, right? Who needed comfort. It turned out this dog needed touch. This dog needed help calming down because those endogenous opioids were low and spinning was increasing those. But the best way to increase those endogenous opioids is through touch, through social connection. Especially physical connection. So even though the dog looked active and playful, what the dog needed was not play. What the dog needed was what we call care, what the neuroscientists call care, which is the system in the brain that gets us to meet a need, right? We reach out, we connect. And in this case, what the dog needed was connecting through touch and comfort, things that would be calming. So like you said, play only happens when endogenous opioids, those calming, warm, fuzzy, bonding chemicals, are at a moderate level. In OCD, what you were reading from this research, beta endorphins are low. So think endorphins, endogenous opioids, similar stuff, right? Okay. So that beta endorphins bind to mu receptors, and mu receptors are heavily tied to social and emotional connection. So if OCD means low beta endorphins, right? And beta endorphins bind to mu receptors, then that, which are heavily tied to social and emotional connection, that means that OCD means low social emotional connection, right? If we pull out the middle piece out of that,
Kind of,
right?
sort of, yes.
Kind of, sort of, right? And it's
Yes.
as simplified as we
Yes.
can get it while still saying. And it was, to me, it was that. Again, I'm the I am on that science end where I do like to, as little time as I have to actually do the research. I really love that you looked this up and found this. That's what's exciting for me about this, is it's like we found this little in-between piece. We knew that the comfort was needed. We saw what was happening, and you were able to put this piece in the middle that explained, well, yeah, it's that way because, we see this in human OCD. So it makes sense that repetitive behaviors is the result of low or a need for social connection, social or emotional connection. So we see a lot of behaviors in dogs that are mistreated or misdiagnosed and mistreated as being a need for more excitement, more play, more stimulation, more enrichment, more hikes, more physical activity. And the reality that we often see is that, like you said, more extreme behavior happens as a need goes longer and longer of being unmet. Like you said with the water, it was funny that you mentioned that, because of that exact thing happened today. My dogs were out of water, and the reason I noticed is because Trotter came to me and was being annoying. But he's a playful dog, so he was doing the, and usually when he does this certain type of annoying type of play behavior, I know he either has to potty, or he's hungry, or he needs water, right? Because it's that specific type of play that I've gotten to know that is the play behavior that is the, mom, I need something. I'm trying to communicate to you. You haven't noticed my water's out. And so, kind of wandering, I asked if he wanted to go outside. I knew it wasn't time to eat. And so then next thing was to check the water, which we have a big bucket that dumps into the little tiny water bowl. And so it drains over time. So it's not like it's a thing where we're checking it every day necessarily. It's, kind of intermittent. And so that was kind of my next thing to check. And sure enough, they were out of water, and he went over there and slurped up the water. So if I'm in the desert, right, and I'm at that point of, it's been 2 days and I am so thirsty, and I see, an oasis, my brain's not going to go, oh yeah, just mosey your way over there slowly and calmly, right? My brain's going to go, get to that water as fast as you can. You need that. And it's going to make me active. Does that mean I need to be active? Does that mean I need more exercise? Does that mean I need more mental stimulation? It doesn't. And our emotional needs are treated the same way by our brain as our physical needs. If I am low on an endogenous opioids, my brain goes, danger, Will Robinson, and it goes, you need to get that need met now, and it's going to make an animal more hyper outwardly. Which is why outward observation of behavior is not enough. We have to, like you said, understand some basics about what's going on in the brain, so that we understand that just because my dog is hyper doesn't mean my dog needs to be more active or more stimulated or more enriched. My dog might just need puddles.
Or something else. And when you mentioned Trotter about that you've learned the way he kind of acts goofy, like with the water being out, you learned because there's a difference in how they play. They might use the same behaviors, but there are still some differences, some very fine nuances. So for example, and this is, I just need to mention that because it's so fascinating. Lucy is the first dog where I have observed that. And Scott might have seen something like that in other dogs before because he has a lot more experience than I do. But Lucy's the first one where I have noticed that. So, Alyssa, you know Lucy humps, okay?
Yeah.
And Lucy has different ways of humping. Um, or even when she goes goofy. If she goes playfully goofy, her ears are different than when she is goofy to actually get social or emotional connection. When she wants to be cuddled, she might still play, but there's one thing that is totally different. So she's a golden retriever. She has floppy ears, okay? Her right ear, and it's her right ear, when she gets really loving, even when she tries to play or tries to hump my leg or something, when her right ear, so normally they are just hanging down, and her right ear kind of goes like this. That's when she gets really loving. That's when I know she's asking for cuddles and for slow, deep cuddles. If it's her left ear, I still haven't figured it out yet because sometimes it's her left ear, but she doesn't get that cuddly. So I'm still working on that part. If it's both ears that kind of go out, then she gets wrinkles in her bottom lip on the side. She gets like really deep grooves. That's when she's the most loving. That's when it's an absolute must for us to
Imperative. That's
cuddle.
a need. Yeah.
That's when she doesn't just want to have the petting, but she wants to lay on top of me and cuddle into me and push herself into me. So she's really needy. So she goes from this and sometimes this, and I'm still working on the left ear, and sometimes it's both. And each one of them has a different meaning. So even when we play, all of a sudden her ear might go out like this, and I know that's when it's time for us to really cuddle. She doesn't even have to stop. I can recognize that during play already. And so they always talk to us, but she's the first one. I have never seen a dog do that. Um,
Scruffy will
so that
definitely get those airplane ears, like
yes.
fireworks and stuff like that. That's when I see his ears. I know he's extra distressed when both his ears are doing that airplane ear
Mhm.
thing. But that's funny that like it's when it's a slight need, when you've got one ear, and when it's an
Yes.
extreme need, you've got both ears.
And when it's both ears, as I said, her bottom lip on the
Yeah.
side gets those deep wrinkles. Now today she also had those deep wrinkles, but her ears were normal. And she came in from the outside. I knew exactly why she had those wrinkles in her mouth. It's the same ones when she gets loving and both ears are kind of turned outwards. But the ears were normal. And she was going like, and I knew she had something in her mouth, but I knew what it was. And she had a little lizard. It was just a couple of inches long. It was still a baby. And the lizard was already dead. And I could tell by her mouth because that's what her mouth looks like when she has a lizard in there. And so they always talk to us. And sometimes it's just so nuanced that, if we really get to know our dogs, it's amazing how we can figure things out. So to
Yeah.
me, that's so fascinating. She's the first one that we've ever noticed that kind of language.
Right.
And and I have had quite a few dogs, but as I said, Scott, you might have observed things like that in other dogs, because of your dog walking experience and your daycare experience and stuff. But to me, that's just absolutely fascinating.
And Scott
So,
says that when a dog that's being hyper because of that extreme need, um, they get connection because of that, right? Because we finally go, oh, you're there, right? We
yes,
we we finally pay attention because the behavior's annoying. So that, of course, now that behavior, we were looking at the reinforcement of that behavior. They get the need met.
yes,
So now the brain is now getting programmed into this works,
yes,
right? And so that behavior is going to become more likely the way that they're going to ask for cuddles, even though the behavior looks hyper.
Yes.
Because it got our attention and got the need met, that behavior is going to start being the language that they're going to use, right?
Yes.
It's kind of like, same with addiction, right? Any kind of addiction, any kind of behavioral addiction, chemical addiction, up to a point you're going to have this, well, this worked, so I'm going to, that becomes the pathway. It becomes what we do automatically. That's where the brain goes. When I have a need for endogenous opioids, automatically I'm going to do this thing, because every time it works,
and
that brain pathway is going to get reinforced.
And I'm thinking that's why in OCD, that's why the hippocampus is involved in it, because the hippocampus is where our memories are. And so I'm thinking that's why the hippocampus is aroused during OCD behaviors as well, because it has worked for you, so it has to recall that information. And because what is behavior? Behavior is nothing but the brain finding patterns and following those patterns. Okay, so that's why I don't know if you know what deja vu moments. Okay, so you can have deja vu moments, and we think that, oh, that must be from sometimes some people think that must be from a different life. I have already experienced that. Well, the reason why we have those deja vu moments is not because we have already experienced it, but because the brain has created a pattern that apparently matches something that or has invoked a pattern that you might have already had in your brain, even though you haven't had it. So there are only so many patterns. There are probably, I don't know, a trillion patterns, but every once in a while, we experience one that we have already experienced once before, or thought we experienced once before. So our brain creates a pattern. And because all those processes in the brain, it's nothing but patterns. And so the brain might pull up a pattern that we have never really experienced in real life, but because we're experiencing it now, it seems like something familiar. So it's kind of weird.
Right. Yeah.
So
it feels like you're reliving something,
even
and the reality is you kind of
haven't
are in the same pathway is being activated. Weirdly enough, right?
with the same pattern, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very, very weird, very strange. Well,
So does anybody have any questions? My phone does not show me how many people have joined or who is on, or
I keep popping in, trying to pop in and out and see who we've got on here, and it's having a hard time letting me look at my own live. So so I'm not sure what's going on here. It keeps telling me, yeah, you're live, but I can't seem to see who is currently on. So
yes,
I apologize for that. But
Facebook would still fix that, But I guess we're expecting too much.
If you have any questions or comments after watching this rewatch, we can continue the discussion in the comments. We are happy to talk about it. If you have any questions about how these systems in the brain work, or any clarifications, or even specific experiences with your dogs, are there situations where you recognize that your dog was being hyper not because of needing more stimulation, but maybe because they needed help calming down?
Yes.
Or were seeking connection rather than seeking play? I would be curious to know how common that is with our audience, because it feels like that, again, that is something that is often overlooked, at least in the training world. I feel like owners are maybe a little bit more aware, but in the training world, it seems less and less. We talk right now, enrichment is a very popular topic, and so I feel like the need for just calming down and cuddles, I suppose there's a lot of talk about relaxation protocols, which are much different than the bonding, connecting, endogenous opioid releasing comfort touch and stuff that we're talking about. That's very different from a structured relaxation protocol, especially if you're involving things like treats, which, like you said early on, treats can sort of mess with the expression of behavior in a way that you may not be seeing what's actually going on with the dog. You're going to see a dog that's excited to get a treat and is suppressing a emotion in order to do so. So relaxation protocols that involve some kind of reward in that way that's not the intrinsic reward needed in the moment may not meet the need in the way that the dog needs in order to truly relax and feel content. So
and as I always say, you don't see the dog's true personality unless the needs are met. And we can't train the needs away, and it doesn't matter what kind of method anybody uses, we can't train those needs away. We can only ask the dog to suppress them, and which at some point is going to backfire. And that doesn't mean that we have to stop all training, because some people do like trick training, some people like doing sports with their dogs, or when you go hiking in really busy areas, your dog might have to be by your side or whatever. It just means that we can be a little bit more aware of their needs, because that is part of care as well. Being able to recognize what they need is part of care as well. And so if I have a dog, even though my dog might have to walk by my side on a really busy trail, or I might ask my dog to sit for that moment, if my dog knows that in other situations, hey Lucy, can I have that? In other situations, if the circumstances would be different, then my needs are still going to get met. Just because my mom can't meet my needs for those 2 or 5 seconds doesn't mean that my needs don't get met. So the more often we get it right with meeting their needs, the less damaging it is when there are moments when we cannot meet those needs. And again, that has to do with endogenous opioids as well. So it's important that we recognize when do they need to have an endogenous opioids, even though they might be moving, versus play, versus they need water, versus whatever it is. And so
what makes sense as the need in this moment?
Yes.
What are they actually trying to communicate beyond just the obvious observable behavior? And they might need a little bit of physical interaction just to get the stress, reduce the cortisol, reduce the adrenaline. But then once that's taken care of, it should not take very long for the dog to get into a point of, okay, now I'm gonna relax into your touch. Now I can calm down and feel safe.
Sometimes the dog might also need to be close to you but not be touched. Because if they have enough endogenous opioids, but sometimes we sit on the couch and we might say like, oh, come here, I need a hug, and then we keep going and going and going and going, and then we get our feelings hurt when the dog walks away, and then we're going to feel like, well, he doesn't love me anymore. No, he has enough endogenous opioids.
Fulfilled a deep desire.
So if we, yes. And the more we understand about how that process works, how that mechanism works, the less frustrated we're gonna get or get our feelings hurt, because we're understanding, hey, the dog is not walking away because he doesn't like me anymore. The dog is walking away because he's trusting me enough, because I met the dog's needs. And now he has the confidence to walk away because he does not need more endogenous opioids because you don't want to OD. And so the more we understand those little things, the less miscommunication we have with our dogs. And then if we do want to train, we are always going to be aware of those needs first.
Yes, it's a bonus on top. And a lot of times we view training as a lifestyle. It becomes the primary way we interact with our dog because we're so worried about behavior and so worried about whether it's going to cause problems and so worried about what people think, that we're so super focused on training as the foundation to our relationship with our dog that the cuddles and stuff kind of come after, and we need to flip that back around to the way it needs to be.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah,
well,
I don't know how this was fun.
Thank you for
I like that. I do want to
joining me
mention
and letting me.
I want to mention one thing real quick. November 18th, that's a Saturday, at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, because we're changing clocks this weekend. So we're going to be not in Mountain Daylight Time, but Mountain Standard Time again. I can't believe the year is winding down. But so November 18th at 6 p.m., it's a Saturday. We are going to do a workshop, and it's about untraining your dog and untraining yourself. I threw that out there, and there are some people that will probably not like the word or might not like talking about untraining dogs or untraining myself. It's a little bit on purpose because we do want to grab attention with that terminology, and we are going to do a workshop on that. Hopefully, well, primarily we are going to do that with doggy parents in mind. If you're a trainer and you want to join, absolutely. So a few things are different from what we usually do. This is going to be a true workshop. We are going to do some talking. We are going to do discussions. We want to answer lots of questions because this is to help dog parents who have problems. And another thing that is different is normally we have a set price for you to join our webinars. On this one, and we are going to do this more often, we were able to set the ticket price so that you can actually pick your own price. Whether you want to pay $1 or $50 for that workshop, that's up to you. That's at your discretion, and we just want to educate, and we just want to have fun and help people. So the only thing is the sign up is still through Eventbrite, and we are going to post that link as well in the comments. It's still through Eventbrite simply because it makes it easier for us to keep everybody informed with one email that goes to everybody that signed up. Yes. And including sending the links to the actual event, and sending reminders and so on. So that's why we like those signups through Eventbrite. It makes management a lot easier, and we are going to record that event, and everybody who signs up, and again, it doesn't matter how, you can pay as little as you want to or as much as you want to. And we are going to record it, and everybody that signs up will automatically get a recording, whether you are there with us live or not. That doesn't matter, but you are going to get the recording. So this is really a hell of a deal. We are planning on doing this for a minimum of 2 hours, depending on how many questions we have and how eager everybody is to participate in the actual discussion, because it's a workshop. So we want to engage with you in brainstorming. Then it can take 3 hours. You don't have to stay 3 hours. It depends on you, because you are going to get the recording, and then you can watch it back later. So this is, again, mostly with doggy parents in mind, and but everybody is welcome.
Yep. It's absolutely going to be, I mean, it's science-based, it's research-based. We're just not necessarily going to dive into the hardcore terminology and all of that. But I guarantee that whether you're an owner or professional, there will be aha moments. There will be information in there that you will have never come across or that you're unfamiliar with that will give you, you know, unique insights into working with dogs. What we study, what we do is very different from the majority of the industry. Even though the industry talks a lot about emotions, it's what we do is delve very, very deeply into what emotions are, what that looks like in the brain, and how that affects behavior, and how that can be used, not used, but how knowing that can help us get back to the natural way of interacting with each other and with our dogs, the natural way that owners want to and try to. And I feel like in some ways the training industry gets in the way of that. So this will help clarify in what ways the training industry can help you, and in what ways maybe you can
help yourself,
chill out a little bit, right, and go back to not focusing on training quite as much as society makes us feel we need to. So,
and the thing is too, when we focus so much on training, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves.
Yep.
And but more about that part when we do our workshop.
Yep.
Okay. And on that note, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you for
all right
for
Bye,
watching,
everybody.
for joining. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.